Well, folks, we are continuing with our series of videos that provide you some information that hopefully helps you get a tag in 2024. That's the goal of everything, is that you end up with a tag for 2024. Now, we've been doing some videos, and this is one of them that isn't state specific, doesn't talk about specific draw odds. This one is what I call a reality check. Okay? Earlier I talked about how to get the most value by state, by species, because I'm a tightwad CPA. Okay? I want you to get the most value out of every dollar you spend. That's my approach to life. I think when you get done with this video, you're going to ask yourself, is this a good use of my budget when it comes to moose, mountain goat, any of the sheep species, or bison? And we're going to use a lot of charts. We're going to show you some things about sunk costs and upfront costs, how that affects your budget. And this is all brought to you by Go Hunt, because like me, Go Hunt wants you to spend your money the best way possible and get the best return for it. So if you go out to Go Hunt and sign up, use promo code Randy and they'll give you $50 of credit in their gear shop. But I think you're going to find this video to be a lot different from most of the others, because I'm almost going to try to talk you out of applying for certain species in certain states. Not because I think you shouldn't, because of any reason other than it's like gambling. It's almost like buying penny stocks. It's not a good use of your money, because everyone's got a limited budget, right? Allocate your budget to the things that are the best investment, the best value, the best return on that money. And when I'm all done, I think you're going to look at this and say, in most instances, and I got a couple caveats I'm going to talk about, moose, goat, sheep, bison, in a state that you're applying as a non-resident, is really going to eat up a lot of your budget. It's going to have a lot of sunk costs. And it's going to cost you opportunities over here for deer, elk, and pronghorn that you might otherwise be able to take advantage of. So, some people think that I just carpet bomb the West, right? I apply in every state for every species, and that I have the crew do the same thing. Nope, not at all. Never have, never has been that way. I started doing this kind of the way I had to do it. At my house, I was like, Kim, could I take a little household budget here and there? And I had to build it one state at a time. I didn't have money to just start throwing around. So I had to make some really strong decisions about what did I want to really hunt? Did I want to hunt elk or deer or pronghorn or moose or goat or sheep? And from that, I came up with the places where I thought I'd get the best value for my limited budget. Completely crossed some things off, and I've still got them crossed off today. And I've been able to do a lot of hunting within the confines of what my budget was. So I would say there's no place where more money is gambled, and yeah, I'm going to go with the term gambled, than applications for moose and goat and sheep and bison. And when I say gambled, what I mean is it's like spending money with really low odds when you know the house is going to win. In other words, you're not going to win. And most of these species, when you're applying as a non-resident, your odds are less than 1%. Okay? That means 99 times out of 100, sometimes even more than that, 999 times out of 1,000. You're going to miss out. You're going to spend money and you're going to get nothing for it. Now, if you don't have budgetary constraints, I say go for it. But most of us, we have limited budgets and we have to allocate that money in a manner that gets us the best value. Like I said, I'd rather you reallocate your upfront costs and your sunk costs over here to things that you actually have as a practical opportunity to go and hunt. So that's kind of the premise of this, and I think when I walk through this, you realize that maybe these are dreams and maybe there's some instances where I should play the game, but in a lot of instances, the reality is not worth it. And that's why I'm calling this sort of a reality check. You kind of have a couple routes to this, right? And I'm going to compare it to stock markets and in investing. So some people just hand all their money over to a stock market advisor, a financial advisor, and say, here, do what I need done. And it's kind of hands off. Well, there's a lot of hunters who go to these consulting services and these application services and booking agencies and stuff and say, here's my money, here's what I want to do it for me. Well, that's great, but this isn't me, and I doubt that that's you. So how do we do this on our own? Well, kind of the same way that I'm going to, again, use the stock market. You know, some people are really disciplined. They do it on their own. They do their own research. They're disciplined about it. They know that over time, they're going to get good returns. They're not going to take unnecessary risks, and they're going to meet their investment goals. And then there's another group of people that I'll call them like Cousin Eddie Leroy, who he views the stock market as just another form of the roulette wheel from Vegas. He goes and he buys penny stocks, and when they tank, he's like, I wonder why I'm not getting anywhere. Well, maybe someday Eddie Leroy is going to hit the penny stock that goes through the roof, but the likelihood is he's going to continue to lose his money. And, you know, in a lot of ways, that's like some of these tag applications. And using that stock market analysis or analogy, some of you know what I'm talking about, right? I'm going to get some charts up here in this next section that we go through. And I think those charts will be really good visuals that explain why these tags, or at least incurring a ton of money as your sole effort in that state for a moose, goat, sheep, or bison, is a risky proposition, much like buying penny stocks. And the returns are pretty dismal. So look at what the non-resident prices for moose and goat and sheep are. Since so few states have bison, just know that bison is more expensive, more rare, and worse draw odds. We're going to just, for these charts, I'm going to throw moose, goat, and sheep up here. And then look at this chart that shows the upfront costs that are required in a lot of states, which is going to eat up a lot of your tag budget, unless you have unlimited money, and what the sunk costs are, right? We're talking license fees, application fees, credit card fees. There's a lot of sunk costs involved if you're chasing that game of moose, goat, and sheep. So to me, you're making every decision you make with your money is kind of an analysis of what your priorities are. And in that value video we did, I think about a week ago, we talked about priorities, okay? Make sure your priorities are met before you start going after the crazy, home run swings. And again, if you got the money and budgets aren't a constraint, I say let her rip. Don't just turn this video off, just completely ignore what I'm going to say. Now, I told you there were some caveats to this video or this concern that I'm going to have out there. One of the caveats is this. If you're already applying in a state for elk and deer and pronghorn, and it's a state that doesn't make you front the costs, so that it only costs you $10 or $15 to add sheep or moose or goat, well then by all means do that, because that's how you're going to get a better return on your total cost. Okay, you've already bought, let's say, Arizona. You already bought it for elk, the license, which is your biggest sunk cost. You may as well add elk and pronghorn and deer and sheep. Or in Utah, if you're applying for elk, you've already got the non-resident license, which is your biggest cost. You may as well throw in mountain goat and moose and desert bighorn and Rocky Mountain bighorn, because it's only going to cost you $10 to $15 extra. That's how you get more value out of it. So that's my one caveat of when you should be doing this. when you've already made the sunk cost in the non-refundable, non-resident license, that's when you do it. I call it the add-on approach. In other words, I'm going to add this on for $10 because you never know when I'm going to draw Arizona sheep. Well, the odds are less than 0.1% I'm ever going to draw Arizona sheep, even with 24 points. But for $10, I can handle that in my budget. And I'm going to give this personal reality check about sheep. Okay? I live in a state where I can apply as a resident. And driving down the road last fall, me and my son Matthew, we were talking about how many sheep tags, applications we've made for either desert bighorn, California bighorn, or Rocky Mountain bighorn across all the western states, including the states we've been residents of. We have drawn 0 sheep tags since I started applying in 1992, and since he started applying in 2002. And if you add up all the states where we've done the add-on for 10 or 15 extra bucks in Nevada, for California bighorn, desert bighorn, back when we could do Rockies, Utah, where we've done moose and goat and everything, you know, all these add-ons, as I call them. We have done over 300 sheep applications, or we calculated after this draw season, we'll be over 300. And we have drawn 0 sheep tags. And I don't say that to complain. That's just the reality of it when you're talking sheep. They're the hardest to draw. And then goat and moose. The illustration of that is to get you in this mindset that, wow, they've applied for 300 applications and they've never drawn. So if you have a limited budget, don't be blowing a lot of it over here in the place where you might also apply for 300 of them and never draw. That's the point I'm trying to make. Don't blow money on something that is just about impossible. Reallocate that money over here to things that are more practical, like elk and deer and pronghorn. So, if you're just starting out, the only states that I can recommend that you should apply for moose or goat or sheep or bison would be Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. And you're probably like, what? The reason is those 3 states have something in common. Once you've bought your non-resident license, you've sunk most of your cost. The add-on is only going to cost you 10 to 15 bucks for each of the species. And you're not blowing your budget by doing that. Now, when we get to some of these others where you have to front the costs, like I'll say Idaho and New Mexico. New Mexico sheep, Idaho moose, goat, and sheep, you have to front all that cost. And when you look back at that chart where we told you what the costs were, you gotta buy the non-resident license, you have to front the cost, you have to pay the fee, and in Idaho you gotta pay a huge credit card transaction fee on that total that you don't get back. So unless you've got a pool of money that you just want to throw out there for the purposes of trying, or unless money's not an object, don't blow your budget in Idaho and New Mexico on those things, because it's going to take you out of the game somewhere else. That's the reality check I'm talking about. And I would say the same with Wyoming. For bison, moose, goat, sheep, you got to front all the money. And the fees just went way up. And you're going to pay an application fee. Even though you don't have to pay a license fee in Wyoming, you get to pay a 2.5% credit card transaction fee. So, if you're just starting out, Montana and Colorado, even those are hard to justify if you're not a resident in some of these states. So going back to my example of Wyoming, Idaho, and New Mexico, if you're a resident in one of those states, then it's a completely different game. Same in Montana and Colorado. If you're a resident, well, then certainly you're going to do it. But it's really hard to justify even Colorado and Montana, because Colorado is going to eat up a lot of your upfront budget. And if you're just starting out in Colorado, go and look at this funky system they have, this weighted hybrid system. I get it explained to me. I still struggle to understand how it really works. And if you're just starting out, you're so far behind the curve for moose, goat, and sheep. Man, you're really gonna have a hard time with it. Montana, well, the odds are so low. You're gonna have a bunch of sunk costs. Maybe for mountain goat, Montana, it has better draw odds, but again, I've been a resident of Montana. I've applied here 32 times. I've never drawn a sheep tag, and I probably never will, and that's just the reality I've accepted. So, where does all this leave you as a value investor, as someone on a budget who's trying to get the most out of it? Well, not much when it comes to moose, goat, sheep, and bison. First, apply in your home state if your home state has those species. That's a no-brainer. Then, and I'm assuming most of you don't live in one of those states, first allocate your budget to the things you have a chance to draw. Elk, deer, and pronghorn being the most common. And if you can do that, what I call add-on method, for 10 or 15 extra bucks, well, yeah, then certainly do every and any species that interests you. I've been at this gig for the non-resident application gig. I think this is my 29th, this will be my 29th year of doing it. And like I said, I had to add one state or one species to my budget every year. And I really had to be conscious about where I spent that money. In doing that, I never started in Colorado for moose, goat, or sheep, and I still am not in there. It would have taken too much of my budget, and it would have cost me some hunts that I really wanted to do that I've had a ton of fun on. I bailed on New Mexico sheep years ago because they bumped how much the upfront cost was. They bumped the cost of the non-resident license, and they shrunk the ratio or the percentage of tags that non-residents get. I wasn't willing to just roll the dice on New Mexico sheep for what that would cost me in terms of opportunity to apply elsewhere. I dropped out of Wyoming moose, goat. Well, moose and sheep are what they have points for there. They bumped the point fee to $50 in 2007. So what's that, 17 years ago? I bailed then because I did the math. It's like, well, for me to get up high enough in the point pool to get a moose tag or a sheep tag, one, I don't know if I'm going to live that long, and if I did, it's going to cost a ton of money. And now, just as I would have started getting close, what'd they do in 2023? They cut non-resident tags by 60%. So it pushed my time, what my timeline would have been, way out there. I didn't know that was going to happen, but in retrospect, kind of glad that I bailed on Wyoming when I did. Like I said, if money's not an object, apply everywhere for every species. And there are thousands of hunters out there where money isn't the concern, and they hire these tag consultants, really experienced people who can do this for them and charge them a fee. That's who you're competing against when you're doing this stuff. You're competing against people who this is their livelihood. They're on a first name basis with a lot of these state agencies and the people who are doing the draw systems and the tag allocations. So, do you really want to gamble money when the deck is stacked that much against you? Well, if you got it, I guess it doesn't really matter. But since for me, money is an object, and I suspect it is for you, just like it always has been, I want you to focus on the things that you can do that are going to pay some results, some dividends. And I think being more cautious about how you do most moose, goat, and sheep and bison, only do them in your home state, or do them as an add-on to a state where you've already sunk the cost for elk, deer, or pronghorn, that is where your value exists. So anyhow, tons of stuff on all this out there at Go Hunt. Again, I know they've got strategy articles that talk about all these kind of things. I'm trying to put it in one video. If you sign up there, use promo code Randy, they'll give you $50 of credit in their gear shop. Mostly allocate your budget accordingly. Don't forgo something that's possible for something that is nearly impossible. Decide where you want to go, apply, and good luck in 2024. I hope this is the year you get your tag.